All right. Hello, Facebook. This is Tommy Valentine. I have the pleasure of serving as the executive director of Historic Athens, a 52-year-old nonprofit located here in the Athens, Georgia area. Our mission is to celebrate and conserve community heritage. Some of you may know us from some of the ways we've preserved that heritage through buildings, cemeteries, and important historic landscapes. But part of our mission is also to preserve the stories that define our community. That's what we're going to be doing today. If you've just tuned in, this is episode 14 of 55. 55 times between April and June 26th. Our goal is to have conversations with community leaders throughout this community to explore and to document this historic moment in Athens, Georgia history. Coronavirus is currently uh, affecting the way our entire nation and our entire world is doing business, interacting, caring for one another. But it's also having a distinct effect on the Athens, Georgia community. And that's what we'll be talking about today. If you want to explore the previous 13 episodes, they're available on our Facebook page. You can go to facebook.com/historic Athens/videos to find all of those prior video interviews with some of the elected officials, business and community leaders that we've been talking to. One quick note before we bring Cheryl onto the line, and that is this is not just a video for you to watch. This is also an opportunity for you to participate. Below this video, there's the opportunity to comment. As long as we're still live, if you have a word of encouragement for Cheryl, if you have a thought, if you have a question, if anything occurs to you, just drop it in the comment section and we can actually bring that up on screen and have the opportunity to share it with Cheryl, share it with our audience, and have it be part of the historic record. So last note before we bring Cheryl on is that right now we're talking to you, but this is being recorded for two distinct audiences. One audience is today's audience, you, the viewer. The other audience, though, is future generations. At the conclusion of this 55 episode series, we are going to be contributing this entire digital archive to our local libraries and research institutions so that future generations can look back at this historic moment and get a sense of how Athens responded. So be a part of that historic record by contributing a question or a comment, and we'd love to share it. With that said, I'm going to swap out this photo over here of Cheryl with the real thing, and we'll introduce you to Katie Pfizer here in just a moment. I'm going to bring her on screen with us right now. Okay, great. Cheryl, hello. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Tommy?
I'm doing as well as can be expected. That's one of those questions I'm sure you've noticed that you have to think a little bit more about these days,
Yeah, everyone tempers their response.
Right. So, Cheryl, you're no stranger to many people in this community because of your work, but I'd like to spend, whether it's for folks that don't know you yet, or whether it's for folks looking back at this interview, I want to take some time here so that we can really dig into who you are and what your work in this community is like. So, could you introduce yourself to our viewers out there?
Sure. Well, I guess I'm Cheryl Legette. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Girl Scouts of Historic Georgia, and I've been with Girl Scouts for 20 years now, which flew by.
Wow.
I am also very active in a variety of civic organizations. I'm Rotary past president. I'm a member of Ebenezer Baptist Church, where I'm over the women's ministry. I don't know how many things you want me to talk about, but more important than anything else, I'm married to Roy Legette, who's a professor at UGA, and I have two daughters, one who's a third grade teacher at Barrow Elementary, and the other who's a graduating senior this year from Georgia State. So that's who I am all the time, no matter what else.
Well, that is a lot to be at any time. So I want to explore a few of those angles here. So let's start with the Girl Scouts. So in some of our first interactions, as we were getting to know each other through Rotary, one of the organizations you mentioned, I mentioned that one of the most defining moments in my life was becoming an Eagle Scout, that scouting was a really important thing for me. And now that I have a daughter, you and I have had several conversations about uh, the appeal of Girl Scouts, what makes Girl Scouts unique, some of the misconceptions about Girl Scouts. And I'd love for you to just share with your viewers who may not know Girl Scouting very well why it's important and how it works.
Oh gosh, what a big question. Well, I guess we can start with Girl Scouting is at this point 108 years old. And we have been around for such a long time, I think, because we continue to adapt and recalibrate based on the needs of the girls that we are currently serving. So, what we've always been about since the very beginning is leadership development for girls. I We used to have a woman in our community, Clementi Holder, who I loved so much, who passed away recently, but she was in Girl Scouting, in like the 20s and 30s. And she talked about all the different things she learned from Girl Scouting. She learned how to drive a car, she learned how to change a tire, she learned how to sew, just all the different things she learned from Girl Scouting. And I always thought that that was so impressive because even then we were ahead of the curve in terms of the kinds of things we were helping girls learn. Fast forward to the 1940s, when even though we were still a segregated society, African American girls were a part of Girl Scouting, and they had troops, they were camping, they were doing everything else that all the other girls were participating in. And even then, I think we had some integration in terms of troop, depending upon, of course, where you lived. We were early adopters in terms of girls being professionals and finding ways to help them build careers and to look beyond the limited opportunities that appear to be for them in the community. We are still doing that. So right now, of course, our big push is towards STEM careers and helping girls find their way and not to back away from science, technology, engineering, and math, because we know a lot of girls do that when they get to be about to the age of middle school. But all of that has always been um, in the environment where we had adults that were mentors to them in a group setting. But in addition to that, we wanted to make sure that they had fun while learning. So none of that has changed. And we're still teaching girls about all the different things that they can be and do and see. But we want them to continue to have fun and make friends. So I could go on, obviously, a long time.
I know we could spend the whole hour talking about the Girl Scouts, and we're gonna, I'm not sure I have the self control to resist my urge here, which is so Jody Gratian, who operates our Hands on Athens initiative for Historic Athens. Jody's family was selling Girl Scout cookies this year. Jody's daughter was, and I have 3 boxes in the kitchen, almost within arm's reach.
Good.
And I was looking over the box today, actually. First of all, I'm shocked that they've lasted this long. We've had some self-control. But
okay, because they'll last a long time and freeze them.
Well, and you look over it, and it is interesting because I think it's easy to think about the cookies in a light way that overlooks how important that exposure to entrepreneurialism can be. I know that just to make a comparison here, for all of the things I liked about being a Boy Scout, given the long tenure of that organization, they've never really figured out what they should sell. I mean, I think we do popcorn, but
popcorn.
If I put popcorn and cookies on a table, I know what people are going for. And I know but I'll say as a young person, when I first joined scouting around 12, 13, 14 years old, at different points, our patrol or our troop would need things. And I remember, doing car washes or mowing people's lawns, or, our patrols going around and getting that first exposure to selling something, to putting yourself out there. And I know you've talked to me in the past about how important an experience that proves to be for the scouts that operate within your council. Can you tell us about, really, like, dig deep into why that Girl Scout cookie initiative is so important?
Oh, well, I guess there's so many things to talk about when you talk about the Girl Scout cookie program, aside from the fact that it's been around since, I think, the 30s. And
Wow.
it started with people making their own cookies and wrapping them up in wax paper and selling them. But what girls have always learned from that is things like community service. Only from the funding that they receive from that, they always make an investment. They do two things: they do something for themselves and they do something for the community. So we've seen girls make donations. The very popular one is to the animal shelter, but they also make donations to the food bank and, other kinds of things that they find important, which they all decide together. But back to the skills that they learn how to, they learn customer service. They learn how to do a plan. They learn how to budget. They learn I think there are 5 basic skills that we tout that they learn in Girl Scouting. A lot of it has to do around business planning. They also learn about keeping their word because when the cookie sales starts, it'll typically be like the first Friday in January. And what we tell them is, okay, you have the order forms and give it to them before the Christmas season begins, but you can't start until first Friday in January. So they can figure out ways to how they're going to strategize, but they can't ask anybody to buy them until then. Wow. And they're on their word to do that. So they just learn so many things from that. We hear from people how it encouraged some very shy girls to be not as shy because they had to approach people about, would you mind buying a box of cookies from me? Once they get to be a little bit more experienced, some of our more veteran cookie sellers keep a list of all the customers that they've approached. And so every year they'll come back to you and say, would you like to buy some cookies? And some of the top sellers have, great return business, and they've learned how to manage that in a way that, if they do a good job of delivering and keeping their word and making sure you get what you need and provide good customer service, then you're a repeat customer. So just all those things are good business skills and really good life skills, because it teaches you how to make a plan. The troops put a plan together about what they want to use their proceeds for. And then once they do that, then they set a target, they have a goal. And then once they know I need to sell 400 boxes in order to meet that goal, then they can be about achieving it. So they just learn many things. One thing I like to share with people always is that it is the #1 financial literacy program for girls in the world, first of all. It is also at last count, $750 million business. And our Thin Mint is the second best selling cookie behind the Oreo cookie. And we only sell cookies 3 months out of the year. So just some tidbits for you.
Well, yeah. It's funny about the Thin Mints is I was always a Samoa person until someone taught me that you can put Thin Mints in the freezer, and that's a bit of a game changer.
I will tell you a secret. Don't tell anybody. I do not like Thin Mints.
You're not a Thin Mint.
I do not. It's probably a sin.
Yeah, no, fortunately the rest of the community or rest of the world, I guess, is out there eating them. But
up for me. I love chocolate and I love peppermint. I don't like them together.
One last kind of cookie trivia before we move on to maybe some more serious topics. But so is it true? I feel like I heard once that at least for one of the cookies, there are regional differences in the names or something.
That's
so
true.
Like Samoa and Caramel Delights or something like that. Is that true?
Well, it's not a regional difference. There are 2 cookie companies. There's ABC, and then there's Little Brownie Baker. And so depending upon what contract the council has, they'll sell cookies from that particular baker. So ours are called Samoas because we have Little Brownie Baker, but they're called Caramel Delight if you have ABC Baker. Yeah. So there are only 2 licensed bakers in the country that provide Girl Scout cookies. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's true.
So obviously we're historic Athens. We're all about celebrating historic things. And I was just so thrilled when we found out the name of your council that, and you've explained this to me, kind of the origins of it, part of it having to do with the regional history of Girl Scouting in this area. I think there's probably a lot of our viewers that don't realize how connected Georgia is to the history of Girl Scouting. Can you talk a little bit about A, what the name of your council is, and then B, what the history of Girl Scouting is in Georgia?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me that question. Girl Scouts of Historic Georgia is made up. It used to be before 2008, there were 8 councils in the state of Georgia, and our national organization went through something called realignment. And when we did that, we went from 312 councils to 110. And
Oh,
the
wow.
realignment was because we felt like girls weren't having an even experience in Girl Scouting, because we had councils in places like St. Louis that had 60,000 girls and all the resources and challenges, of course, that come with that. And then we had others that were in other parts of the country that might have only had 1,000 girls, where obviously those girls aren't having the same experience. And so we went through realignment. When we did that, we combined to have 2 councils in Georgia. Our council is made up of 6 former councils. So the Girl Scouts of Historic Georgia includes Gainesville, Athens, Augusta,
Wow.
Savannah, Albany, Macon, and Columbus. I think I've gotten them all. And so it's most of Georgia. It's 122 counties in Georgia, 2 in South Carolina, and 1 in Alabama. In that, we include Savannah, which was the birthplace of Girl Scouting. And so Julia Gordon Lowe founded Girl Scouting in Savannah and started with just a few girls there in that wonderful city, and it has grown to a nationwide organization. So we're very proud of that because we're part of the birthplace.
That's exciting. I know you mentioned your daughter was a third grade teacher at Barrow. My wife is a second grade teacher at Chase.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really has her pumped up about Nora, our daughter, becoming a Girl Scout was teaching about Juliet Gordon Lowe, which is part of the grade standards. So that's very exciting.
Her
We've had a few comments
also,
come in.
okay.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I was going to say her bust is also at the Georgia State Capitol upstairs. You can find a bust of Julia Gordon Lowe, is one of our famous Georgians, and she is also in the state cap in the national capital. So she's quite a history maker.
That's exciting, yeah, because we each state only gets to send very few individuals to the national capital, so that says something.
Yes.
So I'm just going to bring up a few comments here, and then I want to go back to something you said a moment ago. First of all, the comments I'm going to show so far are not surprisingly cookie related. Jeremy said Thin Mints are better than Oreos, and Oreos are great too. And fortunately, Jeremy then chimed in to say it's forgivable for not liking Thin Mints, Cheryl. So that's good.
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad to see that.
You're absolved. You're absolved. My cookie secret is that I think tag-alongs are entirely underrated. I think that they deserve to be more.
Good. Anything with peanut butter, really.
Anything with peanut butter. Absolutely. That's right. And then Ina Cook Hopkins chimed in to say Cheryl is a great leader. So
I love Ina. Thank you, Ina.
Ina, thank you. And thanks for all of you that are tuning in. I see Rachel's tuned in, a few others. We've got about a dozen or more people that have already tuned in. So if you have additional questions, please continue to share them. So Cheryl, you mentioned you've been doing this job for 20 years now. And you mentioned you had this big alignment in 2008. So if I can do my math correctly, you were a part of that. That must have been a very big undertaking to effectively combine some of the largest metropolitan areas and just geographic areas in the state all into one consolidated council. What was that experience like?
It was excruciating. I was one of the co-chairs of that committee, actually. It was very, very painful. I wish I could say, oh gosh, it was great. Nope, everybody got along, and it wasn't. And the reason that it wasn't, whenever you go through a merger, there's some grieving that goes along with this, because you lose your identity. And I had been the executive director of Girl Scouts of Northeast Georgia at that time since 1999. And so we knew when the process was done that we would only have one CEO. And so we had to basically work ourselves out of a job.
Wow.
Most of us were sitting there. And then, of course, each of the councils was responsible for bringing their membership along, for informing them, this is what's happening, this is why. And not everyone did that. And some people were very resentful of the process. So they came along not happy about it.
Yeah.
So we had to get through a lot of conversations around what's going to happen with the money. You know, how will we make sure that all the girls still have access to good program? You know, how are we going to make sure that the rural girls aren't left out because you got all the big city people coming and they're going to take all the money. So we had to put a lot of processes in place and that kind of thing to make people so we could ensure that people felt good about it. But in addition to that, after it was over, we still had a lot of policies that were not the same because each council is independent. And that's important to know because that's why you don't pay the same price for cookies wherever you are, because every council sets its own price.
Wow.
That's just one of the many things that we do independently. So we had to go through our policies and make sure that they were consistent. Oh my gosh, it was just everything you could imagine that happened when you go through when you merge something. So it was very hard, but it took a couple years for us to recuperate from it. We lost membership, we lost some funders. It was very hard. So, but I think that by now we're at a good place. We're at a really good space and have been for the past few years.
Well, and it definitely makes sense. I mean, I was in the Northeast Georgia Council for our Boy Scouts, and oftentimes if I would run into scouts, it was always disconcerting. Sometimes I'd run into fellow scouts, Georgia scouts, that geographically were quite close to us, but were in different councils and had entirely different experiences, been to entirely different camps. And it was an odd feeling to have someone who felt like a neighboring scout, but you just weren't connected to them in that way. So it sounds like it was a heavy lift, but it sounds like it was worth it to get everyone aligned.
It was.
We're getting some praise. You know, I don't mean to embarrass you, Cheryl, but we're getting some praise pouring in the comment section. So I got to bring it up on screen. So Carla says, such a poised, accomplished leader. Cheryl's an amazing example of principled advocate for girls. Teresa Laird, who is clearly on board the Girl Scout train because we can see her profile image. Teresa says that that Cheryl is a great leader. Carla jumped in to say super honest and funny. I've experienced both, which is great. And then Stephen Patty Lester, Cheryl Legette is an amazing role model for girls as well as adults. Truly a role model for me.
Those are great. Those are all people who I love so much, and I appreciate that.
Well, that's great. Well, folks, if you want to continue to embarrass Cheryl on the spot by telling her how great she is, keep it coming. Keep it coming. You'll not be alone. So Cheryl, I want to transition some now to not just how this tends to operate, but how this moment has affected things in your council and for the work that you do. So let's one of the ways I've been orienting this question is by starting them with the chronology of it. So for each person that I talk to, this kind of emerged on their periphery at a certain point, and then at a certain point it became real to them, and then at a certain point it started affecting their work. And it's been interesting unpacking with people how exactly that happened, because for someone like you who's so busy, it's hard to stay on top of everything in world affairs. So for some folks, it came out of left field. Some folks, they knew it was coming further than others. Can you tell us a little bit on how it unfolded for you?
Well, I think we first started paying serious attention to it right about spring break for Clark County, because we you could see all the news about it. And my husband is a news junkie, so it's hard for me to miss things completely. But we had been sort of watching it. And then my family lives in California. And when we started to talk about my daughter's graduation, my brother was the first person to say, I don't know with this coronavirus thing, whether or not I'm going to be flying anywhere. And that was early March. And so I think that was when we started thinking, wait a minute, this may have a significant impact. About mid-March, though, I think it's March 18th, when we finally, closed after several conversations with our staff and leadership and said, we're going to just have to close the offices all across the state and just sort of, shelter in place and see what's going to happen. And we don't know how long it's going to be. So since then, we've issued 2 extensions of that. And right now we're scheduled to go back on May 18th, and we'll see. But we have had to cancel a lot of our events. In fact, we're having our high award ceremony, which is typically in each of our regions on Sunday virtually for the first time.
Wow.
And we so far have about 600 people who are going to be on Zoom with us. So we're super excited about that. But
Wow.
it's been an interesting journey, I guess, to say the least.
Yeah. A few other comments here. Missy Brant Wilson, who's very important to us, one of our trustees, and she just jumped in to share that her first full-time job was with the Girl Scouts of Historic Georgia.
Oh,
So that's always exciting. Gary Burt, we love Gary and Joan. They sponsored our first week of this program. This week is sponsored by the Office of Kelly Gertz.
oh,
Um,
okay.
but Gary chimed in, a fellow Rotarian, to say, I've always valued Cheryl's wisdom and judgment. So Cheryl, what are some of your thoughts about what all we can do during this uncertain and challenging time? Is there anything that especially we could do to support the Girl Scouts at this time?
Oh gosh. Well, money is always one of the biggest things because, and I'll say, in fact, we're having a big event tonight and it's going to be virtual also because we're trying to find ways to make sure that we can keep Girl Scouting going for our girls because we've had to cancel a lot of our events. In fact, we've had to cancel, not cancel, reimagine summer
Right.
camp, which is going to be virtual this year. And we have a lot of girls who maybe that would have been their first opportunity being able to be outdoors.
Wow.
And so we're going to be sending them Camp in a Box where they can participate, at home. They'll receive a box with their T-shirt and
Wow.
for the week where they can do camping, at home in their backyards or wherever they can feel safe doing it. We've had a lot of expenses that we were hoping to be able to pay for with our fundraising events. Like we paid $70,000 to repair a pool at Tanglewood.
Wow.
And we were like, can't we get a new pool for 70,000? But an Olympic sized pool and it's beautiful, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
So just those kinds of things have been really challenging for us. And of course, we're always needing volunteers, but that'll be for when we can all get back together. But we have a lot of special people with special skills who have done programs online for us. We've done a lot of badge work online. And let me just say, maybe this is a question you're going to ask me later, but I just have to say,
Yeah.
one of the most amazing and exciting and heartening things that we've experienced through this whole thing is our staff has just shown up just in ways we could not have imagined. We switched on a dime to virtual programming, so we had daily dose of Girl Scouting every day.
Wow.
The first day was Daisy, second day Brownie, third day juniors. For those of you who are familiar in Girl Scouting, it's by age level. So kindergartners first day, second day, first and second graders. So it went along and along like that. Till
Wow.
the last day, the program was geared towards our older girls who were juniors and seniors in high school. And so everything that we normally did face to face, we've been working at doing online, and they've been amazing. Well, just like you'd expect a Girl Scout to be, we
Right.
said, okay, if that's where we are, we're going to step back and we're going to reinvent ourselves. And they've done a marvelous job.
That's exciting and not surprising to hear, but exciting to hear. I feel like there's one more intangible in Gary's question here that I'm going to try to articulate. So I think in some ways what Gary is saying, and as you've alluded to, I mean, you've had to experience life as a community leader for quite some time, and being the president of Rotary is no small thing because that is like, gosh, I don't know, head wizard at Hogwarts. I mean, in other words, you're having to, I guess it'd be like the head knight of the round table because everyone in Rotary is a leader. So you've had experience leading leaders. Let's say that someone is out there who's leading an organization who's struggling to reimagine things the way you described or recalibrate. Do you have any guidance for people watching this on kind of how they should be navigating this moment as a leader?
Oh gosh, I think that any wise leader harnesses the energy of those around them. because I think to assume that you have all the answers is a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the best thing that we have learned during this whole process is to ask everybody, not just the folks on the leadership team, okay, here's where we are. What can we do? And then go from there. The other thing, though, when you talk about what can we do, that I found to be really important at this time, aside from the tasks that we have to do, is to find ways to take care of each other. And that has been really first and foremost in my mind. I'm a social worker by trade, is making sure that we come out of this whole. Um, and so some of the ways we've gone about it is we've taken to having lunch bunch meetings online. We're burning up Zoom. So we've been having lunch bunch meetings on Wednesdays where we just sit together for 30 minutes and talk about nothing. I mean, what are you having for lunch? I mean, I did my nails today. Just, the way that you normally get together for lunch, because one of our staff members pointed out so wisely, she said, people want to see each other and just make sure that everybody's doing okay. And so that's how we make sure we're doing okay. We played bingo yesterday, virtual bingo. That was a hoot. So aside from just making sure we take care of the task that I think everybody's going to figure out how to do, because you have to in order to still be around when this is all over. But we also have to find ways to take care of each other.
Yeah, it is hard. You don't have those water cooler moments in the same way. And you can, we've tried to, in our organization, when we're having we have all hands meetings throughout the week where we check in, and, we've tried to indulge ourselves a little bit in finding out what and how everyone is doing, because as a leader, there no withdrawal, no deposit, no withdrawal. If you're not building that relationship, you can't. So that's great guidance. Catching us up on a few of the comments that have streamed in here. Jim has checked in now. Jim Hopkins. Cheryl's an outstanding leader of the community with our community with a servant heart. So when I get away from these questions in a second, I'm going to ask you about servant leadership a bit, Cheryl. But Joanne Sims Hill, leadership matters. Cheryl exemplifies it. And then Missy Wilson chimed back in to say we need a COVID-19 badge for adults.
Hey, we should work on that.
Yeah. Hey, look, you release those, we will certainly promote them through our social media. And Cheryl, I will say, I know this is midstream, but I'll put this offer out there on behalf of Historic Athens, which is, let's have a discussion leading up to 2 years from now, because we'd love to celebrate when you turn 110. That's very exciting. So that's quite a milestone. So, so servant leadership. What does servant leadership look like at a time like this?
Well, I think we talked about it just a bit before, is finding ways to do something for other people. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it's easier to fight. It's easy to just get sucked into all this bad news. It's just a steady stream of bad news every day. More people died, more people are sick. We still don't have a vaccine. We might have one, but we don't know. When can we go back out? It's just so easy to get sucked into that. So for me, it's always better for me to think about how I can do something for other people, because then I'm not focused on me. I'm focused on others. So servant leadership is really, I guess, what we all, especially those who profess to be Christians, or should be looking for ways to do something for other people all the time. Right. So I think we talked a lot about how we're doing that on staff, but even one-on-one, I'm trying to take time out to call people who might be home alone, or check in with folks who I know might be struggling, or forward information. Like when we found out about all the different kinds of financial assistance or financial opportunities that the government was making available, I started sending them to people who I knew were small business owners, or the lady who does my hair, just finding ways. When I get information, I send it to somebody who I think it'll be helpful to. So that's the only way I know to do it.
Cheryl, permit me one quick second here. we still have about 20 minutes left together, but I'm just going to very briefly thank our sponsors. All right. As Cheryl knows, it takes money to operate any kind of initiative. So I just want to just quickly say thank you to our folks. The folks you see on screen here, these are our annual sponsors. These are the people that contribute at least once a year at different levels to support our work. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. So even though we've been around for a while, we still have to pay those bills every year. They don't stop. And so we do appreciate every sponsor that you see here. As I mentioned, each week of this 11-week initiative has been made possible by special weekly sponsors for this program. This week is the office of Mayor Kelly Gert. So we really appreciate his office and Mayor Gertz for supporting conversations like these. And then I just, as a final note here, in addition to our sponsors, we are fortunate that just in the Athens area, we have over 300 individuals that give at various amounts as members. If you'd like to find out more about becoming a member, you can visit historicathens.com. If you want to go right to the membership section, you can go to historicathens.com/2020. But you can become a member for as little as $5 a month. And it's a really great way to make an impact. Our belief is that a community that understands its history is better prepared to navigate its future. And we think that it's really important that we know who we are, what we've been, what we've done, so that we can be the best community possible. We do that through operating the Athens Welcome Center, operating Hands on Athens, which does home repairs for low to moderate income families in historic homes. And then also through our education, advocacy, and public programming, like the programming you see today. So that's about enough of a blurb for now, but just please know we need you and we can use your support, especially at times like these. So please visit historicathens.com and consider supporting us. We really appreciate that consideration. So Cheryl, I know that you know what it's like to have to make asks.
Yes, yes. Can I just give a shout out to Mayor Gert? He has done just a wonderful job of being right at the forefront of this whole COVID, I don't even know what to call it, nightmare. He's just been providing such wonderful and clear leadership for our community, and I really appreciate that. And I want to say that out loud in this public forum. He's been wonderful.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate that. We will have him on as a guest on a later broadcast, but I'll be sure to make sure he knows to tune into this part of this interview if he's not already. So Cheryl, digging into this a bit more. So you hinted that you anticipated me asking about how your team had responded, and you're correct. I'm very curious. In my experience with scouting, and I should point out, while scouting is a unique experience in general, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts are very distinct and unique organizations. You and I have talked about that.
Correct.
But I will just say, as a scout, in my experience, you realize how many leaders at how many levels it takes to run a scouting organization. You have it at the, the level you are, but then all the way down the stream, it requires so many different leaders. How has that chain worked? I mean, how do you stay in touch with all of your folks? Is it just the Zoom meetings you described? How is your team staying a team in this moment?
We are using everything that we can to make sure that we stay in touch. So we have been in constant contact with our staff. And I guess that's one level of leadership. We're talking to them every day in some way. We also have made sure we have what's called service units. This is going to be really in the weeds for some people. Our service units are, if you imagine that each of our areas has a volunteer team that makes scouting occur in those communities. So we have, ones in each county, so to speak. And with those, we have a monthly agenda that goes out to them to let them know, and this is all the time, what's important this month, that kind of thing. We also have something we call 5 on Friday that we send to all of our members every Friday that gives them the 5 most important things to know this week. So this is something we've been doing for quite a while now, but it also is something predictable that they know they can expect to hear from us every Friday. So we can keep them apprised of the offices and what we're scheduled to be doing in terms of our openings, what our programs are that are going on virtually. If there are any things that have changed that are significant, we can let them know. And then our board, of course, we have an executive board meeting every other week that our CEO is in charge of. But we also are calling all of them individually just to check in and say, hey, how's it going? Are you okay? You know, is there anything we need to do to make your experience better? You know, so that kind of thing. So we're calling them, we're texting them, we're on social media, we're doing everything to make sure we can stay in touch and keep people informed.
Absolutely.
We have about girl members about 11,000, and then if you include the adult members, it's about 4 or 5,000. So they're about 16, 17,000 people that we are trying to get information out to best we can.
You know, Cheryl, I feel like I left out something important in the getting to know you section of this interview. And it was something I just alluded to a second ago, which is understanding what makes Girl Scouts unique. We talked about what makes it valuable. But, you know, we're in a time where different scouting organizations are trying different things. There's, I think I get a sense, and I'll say these words, I'm not putting these words in your mouth, but I get a sense that sometimes the differences in prestige or perceived prestige between the scouting organizations is really rooted more in general societal sexism and things like that. You know, this inability to understand how important Girl Scouts is. Can you help me understand, because it's not just Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, there's other scouting organizations internationally. What makes Girl Scouts so unique? In your experience, like what is special and unique about Girl Scouts?
Okay. All my friends are holding their breath right now. Because you know that I'm a radical and I'm trying to be professional and preservable. Let me just
well, we're in the preservation business, so I can keep you preserved. You just yeah.
Well, I guess the biggest difference, and just to be clear, at this point in our lifespan of Girl Scouting, we're very clear to always say Girl Scouts. We don't consider ourselves scouting. Mm-hmm. And of course, because you and I have had very pointed conversations.
Yes, absolutely.
I feel about Boy Scouts accepting girls now. And I think that since they moved to the word just scouting, we want to always be clear that we're not scouting, we're Girl Scouts. Mm-hmm. So that's just to put that on the record for the future. Additionally, I think what makes Girl Scouts unique is that we're a girl-only organization, always have been. And we don't apologize about that. We're clear about that. Mm-hmm. And the purpose for that is that we feel that girls thrive in a girl-only organization. So I know that there's some who think, oh my goodness, you know, how are they going to learn how to get along with boys if you only have girls? Well, they have plenty of opportunities to socialize and compete with boys in the classwork and classroom situations, as well as other organizations. So here in this environment, this girl-only safe environment, they have an opportunity to try new things. In fact, our first badges, when you get to be a Brownie, they're called try-its. That means we have no expectation that you're going to master that skill, but we just want you to try it. And so then, of course, as you get older, then you become more proficient and the expectations change for you. But I would say that is the single most important thing about Girl Scouting is that we are for girls only and we are girl-led. And so, of course, Girl Scouting is progressive. And when you start out as a daisy, as the first, you know, in the first segment of Girl Scouting, in those instances, you're going to be a little bit more led by the adults who are, you know, your leaders, because you need some help in making decisions. But even then, it's going to be, would you like to, you know, wear the blue shirt or would you like to wear the red shirt? But it's not going to be wear the red shirt. You know, it's going to be an opportunity for girls to choose. Well, you know, and as they get older, that changes. And by the time they get to be in middle and high school, they're leading the meetings and they're taking more, they're more in charge of the decisions that are made and they do it as a team, which I talked a little bit about when we're talking about the cookie sale, that the girls learn to plan, they learn how to budget, and then they decide where they're going to go, what they're going to do with the money. So we're a girl only organization. I think I said that 1 or 2 or 6 times, but that's the thing that distinguishes us most.
That was part of the answer I was anticipating. Yes. And, I guess a question, so as someone who has really learned about the appeal of Girl Scouting, who right outside the window in this room that I'm in, I'm actually watching my daughter and my wife run around the yard right now. But looking at that little 2-year-old right now, when does she join Scouts? And then so when does she join Girl Scouts? And so when does the daisies begin?
5. Kindergarten. Yeah.
Okay, great.
From kindergarten through 12th grade.
And then as far as adult leadership, how does that work? So is it moms only, or how do parents get involved?
Well, the only rule that applies in terms of parents is when you have leaders in a troop, it has to be 2 unrelated adults. It can't be a mom and a dad that are the leaders. It has to be a mom and a neighbor or somebody she just met at the training session. But dad can help, and he'd have to be background checked and all that if he's going to be a helper. But he can't be a co-leader. And we have a fair number of people who don't have any children who are leaders. And in fact, one of our troops in town, we call them, our college Girl Scouts, campus Girl Scouts, they lead about 3 or 4 troops. And of course, they're all still college students, but most of them are young women who have grown up in Girl Scouting, and it meant a lot to them. And so they've continued as leaders. So there's no rule around other than you have to be over 18. You can be male or female to be a leader with a good background.
I'll lob you. I'll lob you what I think is So before I was certainly, I think, giving you room to share as many controversial opinions as you have. I think I'll lob a sweet softball here. I think so. I know that there's a track record of young women that, as they age into adults, that have had experience with Girl Scouts, going on to have really important leadership roles in world government and other things like that. Are there important Girl Scout alumni that come to mind? I think I remember hearing once at one point that like 4 or 5 secretaries of state in a row had all been Girl Scouts. Things like
all the female secretaries of state have been Scouts, all of them. And then most of the senators who are women have been Girl Scouts. Queen Latifah was a Girl Scout, as was Serena Williams. There's just a long list. I know Robin, I can't remember her last name, the one who's on Good Morning America, was a Girl Scout. Many of our former first ladies were Girl Scouts. There is a long list. And what I love to do typically when I'm at a meeting is ask all the folks who have been Girl Scouts to stand. And invariably, a fair number of women in the room will stand. So we have a lot of local folks. Mary Adams, who's the president of our past University of Georgia president, she's his wife. She was, in fact, we've changed our name. It's called Gold Award, which is the same as Eagle Scout. But she earned her Gold Award, which was Kerr Bar or something like that, when she was in Girl Scouting. So she's, one of the folks that locally who has been a Girl Scout. So we have a long list of wonderful and prominent, Katie Couric, wonderful and prominent Girl Scouts.
Wow, I'm sure that's far from a coincidence. You don't get every single Secretary of State and most senators without something going right there. So
right.
I wanted to, as we're approaching the end of this interview, I want to just kind of walk through some questions we've been asking each of our guests.
Okay.
The first is, if shelter in place were to end tonight and you were assured that it was safe to go out tomorrow, what are some of the places, restaurants, etc., that you miss going to? What are some things that you'd love to do in person again?
Oh gosh, well, shopping. But actually, I do most of my shopping online, but I've stopped doing that because I'm like, why? I'm not going anywhere. So that's actually been good, I guess. Jason's, I miss going to Jason's. I eat lunch at Jason's every Friday.
Mm.
And I love Tzatziki's, so I miss Tzatziki's.
Mm.
One thing, though, that I really miss is going to church. And I miss my church family and singing in the choir. And so that's certainly one of the places that I would go as soon as, we had an opportunity. So I've been to Kroger, so I don't miss that. I've been to Kroger every Saturday still. But those are, I guess, just a few. And I would go to my office. I just miss being at work and seeing my friends.
Yeah, I know that I miss seeing you in person at Rotary. I miss
Rotary for sure.
And I've been thrilled that so many of my favorite places to eat in Athens are offering curbside or other options like that. Yeah. Great. So let's take the Ebenezer connection to our next question.
Okay.
So we've been asking each person about their favorite historic places. And part of the reason we're doing that is, the U.S. is facing a potential or very real recession. And in the historic preservation community, we're aware that when you come out of a recession, sometimes there's this urge to build for building's sake. And previously safe historic places can become endangered pretty quickly. So if somebody's tuning into this, Cheryl, 60 years from now in Athens, let's say they're at the Hargett Library and they're watching this interview, what are some of the historic places you love in Athens that you hope are still standing?
Oh gosh, well, you gave me my first one. Of course, I sure hope that Ebenezer is still standing. We've been around for 140 years.
Yeah.
So I sure hope that my church is still standing, and not only standing, but vibrant, not just there as a relic, but a place that's still providing a needed ministry to our community. I hope that, I hope that gate there at UGA is still standing. I just love that and all it represents in terms of beginnings and endings for the students who come every year. And I guess I hope downtown is still solid. Yeah. And I'm sure it would look completely different. But I just love downtown and how unique it is really to our community that we have such a vibrant downtown area. So those are the places that come most immediately to mind.
Absolutely. Cheryl, is your office a historic location? I feel like when I'm driving down Newton Bridge Road, off to the side, I see a Girl Scout building. Is that your building?
Yes.
Okay. And how long has your office been located there?
Okay, so I am not sure how long it has been there. I would say for sure 30 years as Girl Scouts, but it was there before that as it was a construction company, I think. Oh, very cool. Before. But I've been there over 20, and when I got there, it had already been our office for a long time. Wow. Our first office, actually, one of our longtime leaders, one of our first offices lives in the house there on Hill Street.
Wow, how about that?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that perspective to us. Yeah, I mean, Ebenezer, I can't imagine this community without Ebenezer. I've had the privilege of going there for, I went to school with Erica Harrison. Erica's wedding was there, and the Harrisons. But then also, a fellow classmate of mine, when Xavier Goddard passed away, I know that's where we celebrated the legacy of his life at Ebenezer. Ebenezer is such an important cornerstone for our community. The gate, and then also our downtown. Long may it rain, for sure. So, Cheryl, one last question for you, and feel free to answer it in whatever way hits home. Thinking back to that person 60, 70, 80, maybe 100 years from now, looking at this interview, what should they know about Athens, Georgia at this time? As we're weathering this storm right now?
I think the thing to know about Athens, Georgia at any time is that it is a close, caring, and thoughtful community. And when I say thoughtful, I don't mean that necessarily in a sentimental way, but I'm part of a lot of other groups and boards. And one of the things that always stands out about Athens folks is we ask a lot of questions. we don't do it to be irritating. We have a need for information, and we ask a lot of questions because in order to answer or to solve a problem, we need to ask questions. And so we're focused in that way. We ask a lot of questions, we ask hard questions, and we don't shy away from hard problems because we think we can take care of them. So we're thoughtful, we're kind of provocative in that regard, but also I just think the success that we've had in the community with the shelter in place initiatives and all those kinds of things is because we get the information out, we have good leadership, and then people do it, because they want to take care of each other. I saw on someone's post, they had a picture of outside with nobody in it, just the street being bare, and they said, this is the best way to demonstrate love, is to not be out when you shouldn't be. So I think that when I think about Athens, I think about how we look out for one another, and we have our issues like every community, but we don't shy away from them. And we try to take care of one another, wherever you come from, we don't care. We just want to make sure that we're strong. So I love Athens for that reason.
Wow. I can't imagine saying it any better. Thank you for sharing. And I will say I'll take a note of comfort in, we've been reading a lot and sharing a lot as an organization about the history of the way Athens handled the 1918 flu, and how, just as with today, we were ahead of the counties around us in terms of quarantining and taking care. And I'll say I take comfort in the fact that I know that when that event happened 102 years ago, your organization was already going.
Right.
So your organization has now handled at least 2 global pandemics. I'm sure it'll be around for quite some time. So
I know during World Wars and that kind of things, we wrap bandages, and now we've been making masks and we're about to have a big national community service project where we send letters to people in nursing homes and hospitals and that kind of thing. So we're always looking for a way to do something for people. That's Absolutely. What we
do. Well, thanks for that service, Cheryl. Thanks for your personal service, and then the service you enable in so many others through your organization. So
I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. Cheryl and I are going to go offline here to our audience. I just want to let you know, we'd love to have you back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Once again, these broadcast every weekday at 1 o'clock until June 26th. Tomorrow we will be with Dr. Audrey Haynes from SPIA and School of Public and International Affairs at the University of Georgia, and we're really looking forward to talking to her. Cheryl, thank you one more time for your time. Thanks to our viewers for their time. And everyone out there, please stay safe and healthy. All right. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow at 1.